Hello everyone, my name's Lauren Foster, and today I'm just going to be going over a quick overview of the FG and PG ASBOG exams, along with a little bit of study advice, non-technical, for the technical you should take our course, some free tools you can use to get organized for studying, and some recommendations that we have at Reg Review for you if you're taking your ASBOG exams this year. Why should you take the FG or PG exams? Well, first of all, you should know about this whether you're a student, whether you're a professional, or whether you are a professor. 70% of students will not stay in academia, and so it is helpful to take these exams now and prep yourself for the private sector. You're also going to set yourself apart from hundreds of other applicants. If you've already been working in the field and you want to set yourself apart, or you are having to change careers right now, it is a great time to get your professional geologist license. And professors, reach out to Terry at admin@regreview.com. She can get you a group discount so you can help your students access these courses a little bit more accessibly. What is ASBOG? What is Reg Review? Well, ASBOG is the organization that develops and administers the standardized licensing exams for professional geologists in the United States. And most states require you to take and pass both the FG and the PG exams in order to become a professional licensed geologist. What is Reg Review? Well, Reg Review has been around even longer than ASBOG, about 40 years, started in 1985 by Lisa and Patty, who we still work with regularly. We have 20% higher pass rates. I'll talk about that a little later. And we also provide study manuals and practice tests to help you get ready to pass your exams. And of course, you might be wondering, who are you? Well, my name's Lauren Foster. I am the president of Reg Review. I'm a PG, PhD from an engineering school, Colorado School of Mines, and I also work full-time as an environmental hydrogeologist. We have a small team at Reg Review, and we do this because we love geology. We really go out of our way to keep costs accessible. Ours is the cheapest course, the only study manuals out there, and we do that because I know what it's like to work in the field. This is not a big money type of job. It's a job you do because you love it. And you can see from that picture of me as a little kid that I've loved geology my whole life. So I like to think of this as a stratigraphic section. The first thing that gets laid down is you get your bachelor's in geology, although some states will allow other degrees. It depends on your coursework and it depends on the state. After you have your bachelor's, either in your final semester or sometimes within 6 months of graduating, depends on the state, you can take the FG exam. Next, you're going to go back into a job and you're going to work in the field of geology for 3 to 5 years. If you want to get an advanced degree like a master's or a PhD, that counts for 2 years in some states. After you've done that, and you've gotten letters of recommendation from people in your field, you apply to your state and you get to take the PG ASBOG exam. Now you should know that if you are already a professional, you can take the PG and the FG at the same time. That's what I did because I didn't take my FG right out of college, and that is totally a valid way to go. Now there's a lot of acronyms out here, so some other confusing ones you should be aware of. 8 years in, you can qualify to apply to be a certified professional geologist, which is a peer review process. There's no exam, and you reach out to AIPG for that. And then some other random details. There's only 35 states that actually use the ASBOG exam. Some states have their own process. In California and Maine, you have to pass the ASBOG exam and a state-specific exam. And the AAPG, Association of Petroleum Geologists, has a different certified professional geologist certification as well. And that is at a similar length of time after you've been practicing for 8 years. One other thing to note is that California, Oregon, and Washington all have additional certifications like hydrogeology or engineering geology, and we have some materials for those exams as well. All right, so you're ready to apply to take your FG or your PG exam. One of the most confusing things is that you do not apply for those through ASBOG. You actually apply to your state board. When do these exams happen? They happen 2 times a year, once in March and once in October. And again, you can take them both at the same time. We recommend you take the FG in your final semester of school or just after graduating because, believe it or not, the material actually gets harder if you've been working for a long time. The FG is a lot like your college coursework, and the exam is easiest fresh out of school. Your PG exam, you wait 4 to 5 years, and then you apply to your state board. And so I will put some links below in the description, and you can click on your state licensing board and figure out the requirements. You might want to apply really early. Some states require more than 100 days from when they receive your application, and a lot of these are still done with paper and pencil, and you've got to put it in the mail. And so definitely get that in early. You're going to need letters from supervisors, and if you don't have specific PG supervisors, there are ways in certain states to get around that. Most state boards are super helpful. You can call the number that's available to you, and they will help you figure that out. And then there's a list of states there that just don't license geologists. This is the ASBOG exam blueprint. It will be really helpful. And what it does is it just says of all these topics of study in geology, it's a very interdisciplinary field, this is the percentage of the exam that covers these topics. And you'll notice it's a little bit different between the FG and the PG, but overall they're pretty similar. And so you're going to take this exam on a computer. Ever since 2023 through Prometric, the ASBOG exams have been computerized. The FG exam is 140 questions, and even though it's more questions, it is quicker to do this exam in general because there's minimal problem solving. Maybe like 1 to 10 questions where you need to pull out a calculator or memorize an equation or write something down. The PG exam is 110 questions, but there's a lot of complex problem solving. So each question takes a little bit longer. It's harder to say, I know this or I don't know this, which is how the FG feels. If you click on that knowledge base link, that's a new thing that ASBOG has put out, and it is just a slightly more detailed subtopic breakdown of the types of things that are covered on the ASBOG exam. And so if these generalized topics aren't specific enough, you can read into those knowledge bases. I will be linking in the description this free tool for a study plan. If you have any comments, send me an email, courses@redreview.com, and I personally, Lauren, will get that email and I will try to respond to you as quickly as I can. I want this tool to be helpful and available to you. I showed it to a course that I taught this summer, and the students were really excited about it, and we just decided we would make this freely available to anyone who wants to study for these exams. And so we recommend you do this at least 4 to 6 months in advance of the test because it's a lot of material to cover. It's a lot to study, especially if you've been practicing and you haven't studied for a test in a long time, which was the case for me. So this free spreadsheet for developing your plan is linked in the description. It has the latest ASBOG topic breakdowns. And then what you do is you enter in the number of hours that you can study per week, and it will calculate how much time you should spend on each Red Review chapter or on each topic if you don't have our study manual. And so that can be really helpful to then take that data, put it into a study plan. And so you break it out of all the weeks you have, this many hours, I'm going to focus on these topics. And you can see this is actually a snapshot of the one I used to pass the exam. Couldn't have done it without the course. I put the Red Review Live webinar in there. I scheduled in the days I was going to take practice exams, and I blocked off time, and then I put in things for every single day. So some other tips and tricks just from me. I would usually do flashcards in the morning for half an hour while I drank coffee. It was sort of a quick way to repeat lots of vocab. And then at night before bed, I would study things that required a little bit more memorization. So when I was reviewing the geologic timescale, I did that right before bed, and then in the morning I'd wake up and revisit it, and I'd do the same thing for a couple of days. So the geologic timescale, Bowen's reaction series, those types of things, I would study right before bed because it was a longer list to memorize. So vocab in the morning, big study topics in the evening, interspersed throughout my study time. And then I broke down my time spent working on these topics and reading the study manual into these weeks, and I just followed the plan I wrote for myself. I highly recommend you come up with a study plan. There's so much material to cover, it can feel really overwhelming, and having this sort of roadmap when you get up or you're tired or it's the end of your workday can really help you get through studying for the exam. We've arrived at the big day. What should you do? You should be well rested. You should be well fed. You should get to the test center early, and you should plan something relaxing for afterwards. No amount of studying the night before is going to make a difference to you passing or not passing these exams. They're complicated, they're involved, they cover so much material. So really you should focus on sleep, which is one of the biggest predictors of success in an exam type setting. You should be well fed. Blood sugar is so important for your brain. I highly recommend if you're taking both exams to take them on 2 different days. Don't try to squeeze them into one long 8 hours of testing day. It means that for the second exam, you will be way too tired. You should get to the test center early. Prometric is complicated, and I'll talk a little bit about Prometric, but it helps to get there early, just peace of mind, no stress, no adrenaline early on going into the test. And then you're not going to get your results maybe for up to 2 months. They say 45 days, but really each state board is a little different about when they release those results. So do something fun. You can see I've got a picture in the background. This is a fun thing you might want to do, is get out in nature. Got to look at some beautiful geology instead of memorize all these geologic terms. So whatever it is for you, go out to a nice dinner. Just celebrate that you took the test before you're stressed about passing, because there's so much time you have to wait. All right, what you should bring. You need to have a photo ID. You need to print out your state letter of acceptance. Yes, on paper. It is so helpful. Don't just pull it up on your phone. Bring graph paper. Most test centers don't provide it. It's hugely helpful for problem solving. Bring a protractor, bring a ruler, bring water. Some test centers are really picky about the type of bottle you bring in. Bring a calculator. And remember, graphing calculators are not allowed. I've had reports that some students have been able to get them into certain test centers. It highly depends on the proctor and the day, but you should not bring them because they are technically not allowed. It's worth packing rolling rulers and colored pencils. They might take them at the door, they might not, kind of 50-50. For me, I took my FGPG back to back at the same test center, but there's a different person proctoring the test, and one day I got to have my rolling ruler and one day I didn't, so it really does vary. Bring some snacks. You may or may not be allowed to bring them into the test room, and you may or may not be able to access your locker, but at least they're there in case you need them. And bring earplugs. You're not allowed to have headphones. All right, what do people say to think about on the day of? You want to walk in and then make space in your brain for problem solving. So write down all the stuff you've memorized on your scratch paper immediately. Secondly, read questions very carefully. Make sure you're answering what they're really asking, not what you think they're asking. You can get in the habit of trying to go fast and breeze through a question, but really read these questions carefully. Especially on the PG, there are words like best answer, worst answer, not this, sort of double negatives. So be really careful, walk through those word problems slowly, and read the questions in detail. The test is not organized by topic. Expect to jump around. Our tests jump around just like the real test, so take practice tests if you can that are similar to the real test. And of course, take advantage of the bookmark function. Prometric allows you to mark certain questions so you can easily return to the ones you didn't know or that you're skipping, or maybe the math ones. However you want to organize it for yourself, use it. Prometric. So, Prometric partners with ASBOG to deliver these standardized tests. They're offered at a few different time slots, morning and afternoon, on Thursday and Friday in March and October. You cannot sign up for Prometric until you have a letter for your state board. This is confusing. If you go to the website, it sort of feels like you can sign up for a test. Some tests, some legal tests, medical tests are available on the Prometric website. The ASBOG exam is not listed. It will not show up. You cannot get in until you have a letter from your state board. So apply to your state board first. Here's some common complaints we've heard from students. There's issues with the website. Refresh, start over. The website's finicky. In a couple of states, there's additional fees for Prometric that you might not get warnings of. So some people, I think the state of Missouri, had to pay $70 in 2025 beyond what they paid to their state board to apply to take the test. So be ready to be surprised. And some people have had difficulties reading maps and measuring distances, although to be honest, we mostly get positive feedback on the level of readability of the exam. Make sure to click everything in the question though. Sometimes there's a link to a story, and if you don't click the link, you don't see the story and you're missing a ton of information for a question. ASBOG exam grading. The exams are graded by a computer, and you're like, well then why can't I get my results the day of? And that's because ASBOG takes these tests really seriously. And their whole exam committee sits down and they evaluate comments left by people like you on the exam. There's a place on the exam to leave comments on questions. If you feel like there's no correct answer or the question is bad, you can leave a comment. If a question gets enough comments from people, the exam committee will throw it out. They also go through a rigorous statistical process to weight the exam and scale the results. And so Don't worry if you don't feel like you passed 70% of the questions. Maybe it was a particularly difficult round of the ASBOG exam for you, and maybe that will get scaled to a passing grade for you. The long story short is that it might take a while to get your results, and those are delivered by your state board. So even once ASBOG releases them, it might take some more time for the administrative processing in your state to send you an email. If you haven't heard in 2 months, you should follow up though. How can Red Review help you? Well, Red Review is the leading provider of study prep courses. You can see our team there in person at GSA. We are a small team. We love what we do. We do this as a labor of love, and that's why we're here. Our manuals combine over 12 different geology textbooks, regulatory guidance documents, and professional experience in one place. I work in the field. I see what things are actually changing day to day, and we talk to ASBOG regularly. So we are consistently collecting data, consistently keeping our materials up to date, and feel free to reach out to me personally if you have any comments. This is the only live course. Red Review offers the only live course where you can ask me and our other instructors questions live in the class. Not only is it the only live course, not pre-recorded ones, but it's also much less expensive per hour than any other course on the market. I just went and did the math the other day because I had a student ask me about this. And the last thing is that we're the only company that's been collecting pass rates. Like I said, we've been around helping people register for geology since before the ASBOG exam existed, and our students pass consistently at an average 20% higher pass rates on both the FG and the PG. And what that translates to for the PG, which has an average passing rate up to 2024 of 74%, is a 94% pass rate for people who take Red Review's class. So I highly recommend you take the course. I couldn't have passed without it, and I'm excited to see you there. Thanks.